Hello and welcome to episode 97 of This Week in Germany. We'll be bringing the world to Germany and Germany to the world with news for the week beginning the 9th of November 2015. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Rob. Each week we feature stories from the news, society, and culture in the English language. If you want to find out more, including ways to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, head over to our website, thisweekingermany.de. Yes, this is number 97, podcast number 97, 97 weeks in a row. We're just 3 away from big number 100.
Yes, and for number 100, we have a special event coming up. If you've been checking our Facebook page, you will have seen the event listing on there. Just go to thisweekingermany.de/live. And what can everyone expect from this live event, Rob?
A lot of stuff. We're going to have an extra special podcast. We're going to have some different features there as well. There's going to be a lot. It's possible you can sign up and actually be in the audience and maybe interact with us as well.
Yeah, so just go onto Facebook and say that you're interested in coming, or if you know you're going to be in Berlin in that day, then just click I'm going on Facebook. It's a Facebook events page. And you can come along and be in the studio and watch us live and ask us questions or ask our special guest questions as well. It's going to be an extra special episode because we're putting a lot of work into producing it, making it really, really cool, really interesting. Yes, a lot. So once again, if you want to come to the live event and find out when and where it's happening, everything like that, it will be in Berlin. Just head over to thisweekingermany.de/live. But for this episode, episode 97, what have we got coming up?
Well, some of the smaller stories that we have is it's kind of sad news that in Berlin, they had to put a fence around the Berlin Wall, the east side gallery, that is, of the Berlin Wall, because there was just so much extra graffiti and just people chipping it away. So that's kind of some crazy stuff.
Yeah, some people also saying it was pretty ironic that they had to put a fence around the wall that they were going to tear down in order to protect the wall.
In order to protect the graffiti, because people were putting graffiti over the graffiti.
Yeah, just a ton of irony.
Also, that North Rhine-Westphalia has spent 5 million euros to track down some tax evaders. And we also have a few other stories as well.
Well, specifically, the thing about that tax evader story is not like they just spent the departmental budget is 5 million euros. No, they spent 5 million euros buying one USB stick.
Yeah, one stick.
And on that USB stick was the information of notorious tax evaders. So we'll get to that later on in the program. Also, we're going to be talking about the Saalfeld fairy grottos in destination Germany. And let me guess, this is a place where you can go and see some real-life fairies.
It is, if you're lucky and you keep your eyes peeled for them. Yes, way down there in the caves.
Of course.
The German of the week this week is Tanit Koch, and what she has done, becoming the editor-in-chief of Germany's largest publication.
Yes, Bild. Yes, I think it's one of the most popular tabloid newspapers in the world, and definitely the most popular in Europe. And so, very important, and she's the first female editor-in-chief of Bild, so we'll be learning all about her later on. And also, story number 2, when we get to that, the government has introduced a new refugee law this week, which has been quite controversial, but people on the left and on the right have something positive to gain from this, but still, it's been controversial. And so we'll be talking about that later on as well. But we're going to start with something which has been very frustrating for a lot of people in Germany. Lufthansa cancelled hundreds of flights after cabin crew went on strike. On Friday, the company had to stop over 200 flights. But by Monday, the 9th of November, that's when this podcast comes out, this number of cancelled flights will go up to almost 1,000. The labour union UFO, which is UFO, which I think is pretty cool, considering they are flying around. So UFO is hoping to put the German airline under pressure over retirement benefits. Until now, the strike affected flights to and from Frankfurt, Düsseldorf, and Munich, those big German cities. But the action will expand throughout the week. That's right. UFO wants to continue until Friday unless Lufthansa shows willingness to compromise. The action is so widespread, the company, Lufthansa, said it was unprecedented in its history. Thankfully, for passengers, at least there is a glimmer of something positive in there. Lufthansa's subsidiaries like Germanwings and Austrian Airlines are not affected.
Is this like a lot of flights? Lufthansa has a huge fleet.
Yes, well, the amount of flight, it can be a little bit confusing when you say 200. That sounds like a lot, but is it a lot? Well, certainly 1,000 flights is definitely a lot. I mean, Lufthansa operates a total of 3,000 flights usually. So it's actually just under a third of all of Lufthansa's flights. So that is a tremendous amount. And to put it into a new perspective, the strike, as it will happen on Monday when we're recording this, it's a bit in the future, as it happened today, you could say, when we release this, 113,000 passengers are affected. That's a lot of people who will be waiting around in airports, who Lufthansa will have to put up in hotels, and even worse, for those people who don't have visas to leave the airport, they'll have to sleep on these camping beds, which Lufthansa will set up in the transit zones within the airport. Wow. So a lot of people are going to be very, very frustrated.
And Lufthansa hasn't really addressed this yet, at least to these strikers. Have the union said anything about that?
Yeah, well, Lufthansa has stayed silent on this as of the time of recording. Apparently, late on Thursday was the last time that Lufthansa gave an answer to the union in any kind of official matter. Well, the union UFO is saying that the company, Lufthansa, could easily meet their demands over pension reform, over retirement benefits. And it says that, for example, Lufthansa has just raised its profit forecast to almost 2 billion euros. So there's plenty of room there, say, UFO, for compromise.
So I guess they have a point?
Well, they do have a point, but Lufthansa, on the other hand, would say, I imagine, though I don't want to put words into their mouth, or mouths, I don't know. Lufthansa says it has to cut costs because both budget airlines and well-funded Gulf state companies are taking away some of its business. So while it is making 2 billion euros in the coming period, it can't say for certain how long those profits are going to stay there if it doesn't react now to a decline in its amount of business that it has. So if the budget airlines and the Gulf state companies do take over, well, then those 2 billion euros over the next period is basically going to be useless. So that's their angle on it, at least.
Maybe it's because I read the news a bunch, but I feel like that I see Lufthansa all the time in the news for strikes. So this isn't like the first time that we've seen strikes coming out of Lufthansa.
Well, that is right. I mean, you are a prolific newsreader. I know that, Rob. But I mean, we talked about this with the union Cockpit. Now, though that union is a different one than the one that's striking this week. Basically, Cockpit is a union which represents pilots, and they had a similar pay and pension dispute with Lufthansa. So, over the past year and even longer, there has been strikes on the part of the pilots. So the pilots are striking, and now the cabin crew are striking. And also, over the past year and a bit more, maybe even 2 years, German trains have been brought to a standstill with strikes from GDL, which is a train drivers union. So a lot of people have sympathy with the strikers. People put themselves in the shoes of those taking action. After all, if you were being treated unfairly, wouldn't you want the chance to stand up for yourself? But that's the thing. Perhaps with cabin crew it's different, but with the pilots, some said they were being greedy. After all, pilots can expect to earn up to 100,000 euros a year with experience, sometimes even more. So they lost some public sympathy. Of course, the major issue is disruption. After several strikes in the air and several more on rail, the public is starting to lose patience with industrial action. And where there's public discontent, there's political capital to be won. The government has threatened changes to the law before, and it will again, saying it respects people's need to stand up for workers' rights, but that the needs of the many must not outweigh the needs of the few. Usually the story is painted as the little man against the big, greedy corporation. But with hundreds of thousands of passengers' travel plans disrupted over the past year alone, passengers are losing patience. So whether it is a noble cause or not, the strikers could be pushing their luck.
now for this week's News in Brief. Have you ever heard the term, "this is why we can't have nice things"? It means pretty much when someone does something so bad that it ruins it for the rest of us. And this is exactly what has happened at one of the biggest and most well-known free attractions, the Berlin Wall's East Side Gallery. The East Side Gallery is the longest stretch of Berlin Wall that's still standing, and it also has 105 beautiful paintings from artists all over the world, and it stands as an international memorial for freedom. Because this is an open-air museum, and is open 24 hours a day to anyone that just walks by, many people have covered it in their own graffiti, or even chipped some of it away to take as a souvenir. Because of this, the city has now constructed a fence that they think will keep people from harming the wall. But not to fear, the plan is that this fence won't last forever. Berlin is currently working on a restoration project to help bring back this memorial to its former glory. Here's some news that might make some people nervous that they haven't paid their taxes, or tried to hide money from the North Rhine-Westphalia's government. The tax authorities of the state have bought a USB stick, a single USB stick, that they say contains evidence of tax avoidance and illegal dealings worth more than 600 million euros. Last week, the state bought this information for 5 million euros. This is the highest amount ever handed over for this type of information on German taxpayers. The seller of the data is said to be a high-ranking former tax expert. A second set of data was also purchased of bank customer information from a major bank. Süddeutsche Zeitung reported that this data covers over 55,000 customers of the bank. North Rhine-Westphalia has claimed more than $2 billion in tax payments from bank penalties, according to Der Spiegel. Investigations have also resulted in about 120,000 Germans coming forward to confess tax evasion in an attempt to avoid prison sentences. A new ruling from the Bundestag has now been voted on and passed, which covers the controversial topic of assisted suicides. This debate has been going on for over a year now, and a proposal from Michael Brand from the CDU and Kirsten Griese from the SPD has now been adopted into law late last week. It was a pretty close vote, with just over half the parliament voting in favor of the winning side. Now, while assisted suicide is still technically legal, it is technically illegal to offer it as any sort of professional service, whether being paid or an unpaid service. The penalty for breaking this law is 3 years in jail. But who would actually be prosecuted? The example is, if a husband who helps his terminally ill partner die would not be prosecuted, while if a doctor or a clinic performed the service, then they would be clinically prosecuted for the act. The debates on this topic are sure not to be complete. There is a very gray area for those that might produce the deadly cocktails to help loved ones pass on. A huge drug bust that took place last February has seen its day in court, and a judge has sentenced a now 20-year-old man to a jail term. The reason this is such a big story is how grand a scale it was, and where this person did his drug trafficking business. The young German used his parents' house and the internet to make the deals and move the drugs through the mail system. About 2,000 pounds worth of different drugs, including hashish, ecstasy, cocaine, LSD, and prescription pills. The police say they estimate the business did about 4.5 million euros since it started its business in 2013. And how did he finally get caught? Just by bad happenstance for him. He had mailed some drugs to a customer, and that customer was not home when the delivery service left the package outside the recipient's house. And for some reason, the neighbors decided to open the box, and after finding the drugs inside, contacted the police. A large demonstration was led by the right-wing group Alternative for Deutschland in Berlin this past weekend. About 5,000 of their supporters came out to Germany's capital to protest the latest refugee policy set by Angela Merkel and the Bundestag. For this very large gathering, there was surprisingly few counter-demonstrators. About 800 was the count for those opposing the AfD's policy that day. Some of the asylum seekers were a bit overzealous in their cause, and a brawl was started between some of the anti-demonstrators and the police. 10 were arrested after the police barrier was broken in an attempt to block the path of the AfD members.
Now moving on to story 2. The migration crisis affecting Europe has been in the news constantly for the past few months. Refugees have been streaming from Syria in particular into Europe as the civil war in Syria destroys communities and threatens to devastate even more. Many of those fleeing war have crossed over the Mediterranean Sea to Italy or Greece. Others have attempted to enter the European Union via the Baltic states. Most of these asylum seekers have ended up in Germany, looking for a new life thanks to Germany's so-called open door policy. This week, the government decided on new rules which limit refugees' rights. Syrians entering the country would only be granted subsidiary protection and can only stay for 1 year. Importantly, subsidiary protection does not permit family members to join the refugee in Germany. It's all part of an effort on behalf of the government to try and control the numbers of asylum seekers. The authorities hope the new rules will allow them to kick out failed applicants quicker. This subsidiary protection law is related to this. It means the government can either extend their right to stay or kick them out, depending on the situation in Syria in a year's time. Not only has there been confusion between statements of leading politicians, but coalition partner SPD has criticised the reaction. Vice-Chancellor Sigmar Gabriel, who's leader of the SPD, said the government should implement the measures already agreed first. It makes it seem that the left hand of the German government doesn't know what the right hand is doing, Sigmar Gabriel said. And we'll be going even deeper into this topic during our live program. That's in our 100th episode. Just go to thisweekingermany.de/live to get all of the details. If you're in Berlin, you can come along and sit in our audience and even ask questions of our special guest. And if you're not in Berlin, you can listen live online too. In that program, we'll be speaking to a refugee who has a very emotional story to tell, and we'll also be speaking to experts on the migration crisis as well. So we'll be going in depth into that topic in our 100th episode. Once again, that URL to get all the details as to how you can participate and listen live, thisweekingermany.de/live.
And coming up right now is Destination Germany, where we take you on a journey somewhere in the country that we think is well worth a visit. Whether you're a tourist or a permanent resident, a foreigner, or a German citizen, we'll be covering those famous known sites as well as the little known corners of Deutschland. All that matters is showing you that Germany is an interesting and exciting place to visit. If you enjoyed the destinations that we talk about each week, make sure that you go to our website, thisweekingermany.de, and we'll have some photos of each week's destination.
And we had a brand spanking new destination in the last episode for you. We went to the city of Dortmund to take a look at Germany's National Football Museum. That's soccer, by the way. That's not American football, because Germans don't care about that. It's been in the planning since Germany hosted the World Cup in 2006. And just last month, at the end of October, it opened its doors to the public. Visitors can see the history of German football, re-experience all the great plays, and learn about the great players through a variety of different interesting media. Very interactive and very cool if you're into your sports stuff. But now, without further ado, episode 97's Destination Germany. Rob, it's over to you.
Well, we've been doing a bunch of cool museums and events and castles and stuff like that lately, so I'm going to bring you a destination that I think are going to make the nature lovers pretty happy out there. As long as you're not too claustrophobic, that is. So
I guess we're going in a cave if it's claustrophobic, or like inside a tree, or in a capsule under the sea.
Well,
sounds like Dr. Seuss wrote this script.
Well, there are some pretty cool locations, like tree locations in Germany. And I have actually seen...
Oh, yeah, those tree locations.
No, like tree houses and stuff like that.
Ah,
yeah.
Okay. No.
And
go
I've
into
actually
the woods,
been
you got plenty of there.
on the Baltic Sea, where you can go like way out on a pier and then get inside of a capsule, and it will take you down for about 15 or 20 minutes and give you a look at what the sea floor looks like. So pretty neat. So they do have some of that stuff. But you were correct the first time. We're going to a cave, but it's more than just another popular cave. In fact, this cave is in the Guinness Book of World Records. Our destination, the Guinness Book of World Records. Our destination this week is going to be the Saalfeld Fairy Grottos, or in German, the Feengrotten.
Close enough.
Feengrotten.
So before we go on, what is a grotto exactly? So I feel like I've heard this word several times and normally associate it with Santa Claus in his little cave, some kind of Christmas grotto. So what is a grotto?
Well, okay, it's kind of like a cave, but not exactly. A grotto is supposed to be like a special or a beautiful small cave, and many times it's near a body of water. So all grottos could be a cave, or all grottos are a cave, but not all caves are grottos.
Well, that's cleared that up. So what is this magical fairy grotto you'll be telling us about today?
It's located in the state of Thuringia, and it's right on the edge of a small town called Saalfeld. And I say it's on the edge because this underground destination used to be a former mine for the town. And this place was a mine for a long time. It came into existence around the early 1500s, mid 1500s, and it was used as some sort of capacity as a mine until the late 1800s.
But it's not a mine anymore, because that wouldn't make a good tourist destination if you're trying to look out for some fairies and people are trying to chip away getting coal all around you.
No, it ceased being profitable and was just kind of left there until it was found later by explorers, and they thought it was the most beautiful thing that they had ever seen.
Well, when I think of an old mine, I think of like dirty black walls or something like that. It doesn't sound beautiful.
Well, this is no ordinary, just rundown mine. Due to all the mineral deposits that have accumulated on the rock formations during the past 3 centuries, it is alive and bursting with different colors and shapes, like nothing you've ever seen.
And didn't you say it was a Guinness World Record holder?
Yeah. The Saalfeld Fairy Grottos has the title of being the world's most colorful cave, and so says, or at least so says that little thing, the Guinness Book of World Records.
Okay, so that does sound like it is genuinely special then, if it's this, it's been recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records as being beautiful and dazzling in terms of its appearance, so that does sound pretty special. So what can visitors expect when they go into this beautiful cave or grotto or mine?
Well, it is located in the heart of Thuringia, and it's billed as a fairy or a magical fairy kingdom. Above the mine is a dense forest where they say elves and fairies and trolls and forest spirits and that type of thing are still living. So before you dive deep in the cave, you can spend a little bit of time in this very wonderful adventure park that is above the mine. And it also has a treetop palace that sounds pretty intriguing.
Okay, so look out for all the fairies. But while this place does sound pretty cool, I'd love to know about this cave itself. Give me all the details of the Feengarten specifically.
They have multiple tours that you can take daily, and you go down into the caves and see the rich mineral colors that are all throughout, some glistening off the water as well. And for just to say up front, all you non-German speakers out there, don't feel intimidated because they have tours in English as well. And once you go down into the caves, you'll walk around and learn about the history and makeup of what was actually on all the rocks. And you can see waterfalls and other miracles of nature found in this fairy grotto. You will be in awe of the beauty and colors bouncing off the walls and the water and all the stalagmites and the stalactites. And if you're lucky, you might just see a fairy.
Yeah, stalagmites go up and stalactites go down. I remember that because tights, like a leg going tight down. Something like that. That makes sense. Well, it does sound definitely like a great time for both kids and adults as well.
If you want to know more, they also have a museum there where you can actually touch some of the cave materials, which you're not supposed to do when you're on the tour. And you can see how the cave was formed during all the mining operations that were going on hundreds of years ago. And they also have a natural health area or healing area that are deep inside the caves. You can go down in there, and they say that the air is some of the most pure around, and it can help people suffering from things like asthma, bronchitis, weak immune system, sleep disorders, as well as just being good for general stress relief and relaxation.
Now, probably the thing that you're thinking right now is, what do these magical, mysterious caves look like? Because that's the picture that we've been painted by Rob so far. Well, then you can go to our website, thisweekingermany.de, and you can check out pictures of each week's destination on there. You can check out all of the great photos in the gallery for this episode. Next up, our German of the Week section, where we put the spotlight on a prominent person from this week's news who could be a German citizen or sometimes even a foreigner who we deem an honorary German who's had an effect, for better or worse, on German culture, society, or politics.
Our German of the Week this episode is Tanit Koch. And you might be asking yourself, who's Tanit Koch? I've never heard of her. Well, you wouldn't be the only one, but you will definitely know the organization for which she will soon be responsible. It is none other than Germany's largest red publication and biggest tabloid newspaper, Bild. Not only has Koch taken the big chair of the paper, being announced as the new editor-in-chief, she is also Bild's first woman that has taken that role. And she's no amateur. As you would imagine someone in this role and this being in this high a profile and a stressful position would be. In 2009 and 10, she was the editor-in-chief for Die Welt, another known German publication. In the past few years, she has actually been the deputy editor at Bild. Kalk seemed like a well-qualified person for this job. Both develop and build publications are part of the Axel Springer corporate group, which is one of the biggest media companies in Europe. She has her work cut out for her when she actually steps into this position the first day of 2016.
And that brings us to the episode number 97's close. And just before I go, I'd like to say, Rob, did you know I was in Prague this week? And it's really interesting, really fascinating, if you ever get the chance while you're in Germany to go over to Prague, because Prague used to be a German city, or it was in the Holy Roman Empire. And so you see the German language all around. It's really fascinating. But of course, I was very happy to be back in Germany with a perfect 4G connection, and also understanding the language in Germany really helped as well. But it's definitely worth a visit, and you can even trace some of the German history back then as well. It's absolutely fascinating.
Yes, I can back you up on that, because I have been to Prague as well twice, and there's tons of history and cool things to see there. A definite destination that you should go to.
Okay, all right. Don't worry. You win. You win. Yeah, it used to be the seat of the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. So really, really cool. Definitely a big, strong connection with Germany's history.
And something else that's really cool is our 100th episode is coming up. I'm going to remind you again. Make sure that you go to the website thisweekingermany.de/live, and you can find out all the information about the event coming up.
That's right. You can also sign up there as well to be part of our audience. thisweekingermany.de/live for all of the details. This Week in Germany is produced by Daniel Winter. It's written and presented by myself and Rob Bishop.
Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back in just 7 days with more This Week in Germany.